me about, and obviously not to go into detail, but tell me about your background with the military.
I joined in 1987, and the reason I joined is my eldest brother was in the Airborne Regiment, and he had a very serious incident where his parachute failed and he crashed into the ground. And I had visited him at National Defense Medical Center many times with my mother, and I just became enthralled with it, like listening to the stories and everything. And I remember my mother saying, "Don't think it." But of course,
You
next
thought it.
thing I do, I go to the recruiting office.
Been on many tours. If you can just talk a little bit about where
Yes.
you've been.
Initially, I started in Winnipeg, and then from Winnipeg, the battalion was sent to Germany for 4 years. I left 6 or 7 months earlier than everybody else, and I was posted to London, Ontario, then to Petawawa, and from Petawawa, I did 3 tours of Yugoslavia, Croatia, Bosnia, Sarajevo, like the whole thing. I did that 3 times, twice with United Nations Protection Force, and once with the Sustainment Force. After that, I came back to Canada, and we were posted several different cities. My then wife, my ex-wife, was a service member as well. She was a nurse. Yeah,
And then Afghanistan.
and then Afghanistan. And my wife had already done 1 tour of Afghanistan, and a bunch of people were asking if I could go because they knew I had some skill with something. So
Safe to
anyway,
say,
yeah, I went.
safe to say they weren't easy.
No, none of it.
Not to get into it.
And I gotta tell you, the first 3 tours of Yugoslavia were just as frightening and dangerous as Afghanistan. When you think about it, there was a war going on the whole time we were there. So, yeah, and I saw a lot there. The cliche is true. After you see a whole bunch, it does affect you.
Tell me about the evening here. I'm sure that never entered your mind. What would come to be from that?
No, not at all. As you know, I'm the primary caregiver for my father, and my young son was in the basement at the time. And yeah, my bedroom is immediately next to the front door, and so it was very loud and it resonated like it was frightening. And for someone, a veteran with PTSD, who is hypervigilant and is always checking on the security of others, including myself, that's what happened. When they kicked the door, I was in the fight or flight mode, and I just wanted to confirm who it was, because as you well know, a kilometer away from here we have an encampment, and they do come around and steal propane bottles and stuff. So that's who I assumed it was. And yeah, it was very, very frightening. And as Alan said, we do know who the clear leader was. But yeah, when the young man, reached for my arm, that was it. They're already on my property. I'm worried about my father. I'm worried about myself. So yeah, I pulled out a very small pocket knife, and it never left my chest. It was here.
Tell me about. So you went, you looked for them, couldn't find them, came home, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, but went and looked for them, couldn't find them, came home. They were in your driveway, or they were
Nope.
right behind you? Or?
About 2 split seconds after I pulled into the driveway, I noticed 4 or 5 vehicles coming at a fairly high rate of speed in our little neighborhood, and they all stopped right in front of the house, and everybody dismounted from the vehicles, and as Alan said, there was a lot of people there. The interesting thing is, during all of this cacophony, when all this started, there was an older gentleman as part of that group, and I think he obviously thought this is not going well. And he kind of started distancing himself from the rest of the group, and I think he actually walked away as well.
Did you ever think coming back for retirement to peaceful Coburg? We've got the birds around us that everybody can hear, but did you ever think in your hometown that something like this could happen?
No. No. However, the opposite side of that is being a military veteran with PTSD and have gone through many, many harrowing incidents. I'm always really concerned. That's why I do checks around my house. Sometimes at 3 in the morning, I walk around my house in the periphery of the lawn. So I'm always hyper vigilant. But did I expect it? Of course not.
Last question: did you expect even the charges and what happened there? Like, did that shock you? Because
It did.
obviously you knew what happened and what I guess maybe what you may have thought might have happened is the kids to be charged, not you. But I mean, were you shocked at that?
Yeah, I would say I was a little shocked. And not knowing much about the law, let's face it, I was a soldier. One of my first impulses when one of the officers talked to me was, why didn't you just say, you people go home and let's talk to me? Like talk to me at my home. But no, it just kept getting a bit worse and worse.
It's just unfortunate the way the entire thing is just unfortunate how it had to drag on for months.
Yeah. And I'll be brutally honest with you, one of my biggest concerns over this whole thing has been the thousands, literally thousands of veterans that I served with and people I don't know who have texted me or emailed me in the past few weeks. It's a very slippery slope when a veteran is approached by someone, and I can guarantee you that they were all on the edge of their seats because many, if not all of them, have the same issues.
How are you doing now?
I'm doing a bit better. I was with my occupational therapist today, a psychiatrist tomorrow. But yeah, I'm very, very happy that Alan has managed to squash this and the charges were withdrawn. But it had a change in my life. Like I have been changed by this as well.
Tell me about this. Tell me about this case and how your thoughts on it, basically from start to finish.
Well, Todd, Todd represents, as far as I'm concerned, the best of Canadians. He was a soldier for years, is a veteran now, was over in Afghanistan. And these kids, and more predominantly their families, represent, frankly, the worst of Canadians. Um, there was, it was a bunch of kids doing stupid kid things. They kicked on Todd's door 9:30 at night. Didn't kick it in, but kicked it. Todd's here taking care of his 90-year-old father, and then the kids run away. And when Todd goes looking for them, the kids clearly got in touch with their parents and started telling stories. Stories about being hit by Todd's Jeep, stories about Todd yelling and screaming he was going to kill them. And a short while later, Todd's facing a lynch mob of what I would describe as some really, really bad parenting. They came down his driveway onto his property. All of them are trespassers, threatening Todd, accusing him of trying to kill their children. A lynch mob. They only lacked the torches and pitchforks. And there was one mother in particular who seemed to be leading the mob. And interestingly enough, when the police were finally called, it was as a result of the actions that Todd took to defend himself. These parents, so concerned about Todd having hit their children with their vehicle, never thought to call the police. No, they took it upon themselves to come to Todd's house late in the evening, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock at night, whatever it was, and threaten Todd as a group. And in their minds, clearly they thought they were entitled to do that. They thought they were right to do that. So it's really not surprising that their kids acted the way they did, because this was the sort of parents that they have. And, the kids obviously can't be named under the Youth Criminal Justice Act, and that's fine. I have no problem with that. But it is a shame that the parents get to act that way and have absolutely no repercussions to their terrible, terrible conduct.
Were you surprised? Obviously, that Todd was charged, but were you surprised that the kids weren't?
I was. I was. At the very least, Pete, they should have been charged with public mischief. Kids will play nicky nine doors and they'll do stupid stuff like that. But kicking somebody's door at 9:30 at night like that for the purposes of a TikTok video should certainly warrant a charge of mischief. But then to take it to the next step of lying, of accusing Todd of having hit them with their car, it's important to note what they claimed was that Todd hit them with his Jeep, with the bumper of his Jeep, but he wasn't going very fast when he did it. The officer that attended noted no injuries on the kids, no marks on their clothes, no dirt on their clothes. These kids were never hit. But they lied about it. They lied to their parents, and their parents continued to lie to the police, and that should have resulted in a charge of public mischief. Because that's the act of basically weaponizing the criminal code. You lie to the police about somebody to get somebody in trouble falsely, and they don't. Clearly, they didn't care about the consequences to Todd.
What surprised me as well is that the thought, like when you look at Todd, like you say, what he's been through, he just wants to come home to spend his, retiring years after fighting for this country. And, that he is a veteran, great, but even if he wasn't a veteran, we'd still be sitting here doing this. But I mean, like, it's just more so because of what he's been through, but just there was no intent of Todd as there was with the kids to, like you say, to lie, as with the kids to nicky nine doors.
Yeah, Todd reacted to a situation. The kids, they planned out their misconduct, right? They had kids standing out the road with the videos going, and three, I think it was, that came up and kicked the door. That was all planned and calculated. Todd just simply reacted to it, and when he came back to his house after having gone out to look for these kids and not finding them, frankly, but when he came back to his house, he was confronted by the parents of these kids. And interestingly, they live nearby, some of them. So it isn't a stretch to say that the kids called their mummies and daddies making up a story that the mom and dad clearly didn't bother to question. Because if they'd questioned it, their first action would have been to contact the police and say, my goodness, this man tried to hurt our children. But when they don't do that, when they take it upon themselves to come here to Todd's house at 11:30 or 12 o'clock at night, whatever it was, as a lynch mob, and there was close to 12 of them, that gives a pretty clear impression of what their intentions are, and that they think they're entitled to do this, and then to lie to the police about what happened. It's pretty concerning.
When were the police called?
Well, it wouldn't have been until...
Sorry, who called them then?
I don't know which ones, off the top of my head, Pete, I don't know which ones called. I expect it was the mother who seemed to be leading the charge. She, as I understand it from the disclosure, was taking up an awful lot of the police officer's time as he was trying to interview the various witnesses. It appears that she was interjecting herself into all of the interviews to the point where the officer had to repeatedly tell her to go away. He's trying to interview other witnesses. So I expect it was her that called. She seemed to be the...
But she certainly didn't call right away.
No. It would have been...
did she call when she was... Forgive me. Did she call when she was here? Do you know?
The call was made when she was here, but it was after Todd reacted to the mob coming down his driveway.
Okay. So it wasn't the actions of the kids calling the parents. It was the actions of Todd here.
Yeah, and frankly, I'm not sure what...
And I shouldn't say actions, like as I say, the alleged.
Yeah, well...
Not even alleged now.
The fact is, Pete, they had to have had in the back of their mind that coming here as a mob was going to lead to something, right? It wasn't going to end up with hugs and apologies, because that's not what they wanted when they came down the driveway accusing Todd of trying to kill their kids. I mean, those are strong accusations, the kind of accusations that if they were true, you'd bring it to the attention of the police.
Immediately.
It's interesting that she says to the police, we were going to deal with this with our kids, and we were going to contact you later. Well, That's after, of course, the police are here at Todd's house and Todd's been arrested and interviews are being done. So, I don't think that's a very worthwhile statement on her part.
Charges were withdrawn,
Charges were withdrawn this week.
and it was what were the charges?
Oh, assault with a weapon, uttering threats.
Yeah.
I think there was a dangerous driving.
No, possession of weapon.
Possession of a weapon.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And Todd, and again, to be clear and to be fair, Todd pulled out a knife at one point.
Pulled out a pocket knife as a young male. I think he was probably in his 20s. I expect he was probably a brother of one of the kids. Came at Todd aggressively. The mother was leading the pack, and this younger fella, he decided to step forward. Todd had been telling them, get off my property, get away from me. And Todd, in response, simply pulled out the knife and told them all quite loudly and impolitely to leave his property. And it's at that point that they called the police.
Totally. Well, again, about the officer, he was just doing his job with the.
Yeah. I certainly give the officer credit. It couldn't have been an easy situation for him. I got the sense as I reviewed the disclosure that fairly quickly he picked up on the fact that Todd maybe isn't the monster that these people were making him out to be, and that there was probably a little bit more going on with the way that the parents were acting, and this idea that the kids were kicking doors for this door kick challenge thing of TikTok. But he was confronted with the statements that he got at the time, and he did what he had to do. So it was something where it's unfortunate, but once the truth came out through discussions with the Crown Attorney,